Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Bernardo, Dean of UCLA Anderson. I'm delighted to welcome you to another in a virtual series of conversations we're having with several distinguished speakers. Today, we're very honored to be joined by Peter Guber, Chairman and CEO of Mandalay Entertainment. Peter's also a UC Regent, and he has taught at Anderson as well as the Department of Theater, Film, and Television for many years. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Before founding Mandalay Entertainment, Peter was chairman and CEO of Sony Entertainment and Polygram Entertainment, owner of Casablanca Record and Filmworks, and president of Columbia Pictures. As a producer, Peter has a string of personal box office hits, including Rain Man, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Most recently, he and Mandalay produced the documentary film series The Last Dance for ESPN. He's operating owner of the Golden State Warriors and owner of the LA Dodgers, and of the LAFC soccer team. Somehow he finds time to be a UC Regent and currently serves on the California Governor's Task Force on Business and Job Recovery. And as I mentioned, he's taught for many years at UCLA, including a course here at Anderson on critical milestones in preparing for leadership, which is one of the most popular courses we offer in our MBA program. So let's get started. Peter, I think there's going to be a lot for us to talk about today. You're a leader in entertainment, sports, esports, higher education. So we'll have a lot of questions about what's going on in those areas. But before I do, perhaps you could help our audience sort of understand, or what your last 2 months have been like. How would you characterize this really extraordinary crisis and what it's what it's meant for you in your own life?
Well, this is a black swan event that happened. I mean, you can prepare for a lot of things. You can prepare for turmoil. You can prepare for, you always have change. But this is a black swan event that requires a higher degree of attitude than just aptitude. The attitude will shape how you use and resource your aptitude. So I'm managing uncertainty on steroids. I mean, there's so much uncertainty. And I think that I found that our success will be directly proportional to the amount of intensity of uncertainty that I can reasonably handle. And I think that's true for everybody else. We're living in a very unstable and uncertain environment. If you think of it this way, in some sense, I felt like I was crashing at sea, and I was the sole survivor, and anybody else around. And first I was thrilled that I was alive. I didn't get COVID and I didn't die. That would be particularly endless. And then I had to figure out a set point, i.e., exactly where you are. You can't start a new journey unless you know exactly where you are and then it's a commitment to survival. It's a commitment to survive. I'm going to survive. Then it's a commitment to success. And if you go to commitment to success, then you have to assess your resources and your resourcefulness. I spent a lot of time with all of our companies doing that. And then you have to focus on the destination and the outcome. You can't focus just on the problem. You have to focus on the destination and outcome with full precision and commitment. And then you got to swim like hell, like your life depends upon it, because it does. It does depend on it. And then you got to let God take care of the details. So that's a lot of rhetoric. But unless you have a philosophical bent to manage these kinds of experiences, unless you have some philosophical view of it, you're never going to get your arms around it. But you need those kinds of tools, not just the rules, to be able to navigate in this environment. And it's not going to change as rapidly as I would like. So I'm going to constantly have to reset with some precision, what resources I'll need and what resources I'll need to bring, or the companies and people and management of my organizations will need.
For me, and I think a lot of people, what really sort of brought home sort of the magnitude of the crisis we were facing was when we learned that the NBA wasn't going to continue with its schedule around March 11 or so, or mid-March. And I know that had kind of a profound effect on how I thought about where we were in the crisis. Tell us a little bit about, you're an owner of the Golden State Warriors. What did that moment feel like to you?
Well, I think that the moment felt like somebody changed not only the rules but all the environment in one instant. And the first thing I thought of, what does it mean? What does this event mean to me? What does it mean emotionally? And selfishly, it was me. What does it mean to me? What am I going to have to do to protect our investment, our enterprise, the league, the team, our employees, the people, our fans, our sponsors? A whole host of constituents immediately came to mind. And it was breathtaking. It was, you know, I really, it caught me not off guard because I could see the turmoil coming with the malady that COVID was, but I didn't really, until the legs were chopped out from under, I didn't really recognize how it was going to physically and fiscally impact us. It was really a major blow to our enterprise and to all of the organizations that I represent or am involved with. I didn't have any answers at that point, and thankfully I just kept trying to write down, what are the questions? What are the questions? What are the questions I have to look at? And because I had to provide my own leadership to my own partners and leagues and employees and teams and players, a whole set of audiences, so to speak, that I'm responsible to, for, and with. And so I took some time, I took a breath and said, okay, I got to just get my arms around this. There's no way I was going to get my arms around this once I realized what it was. So I had to swim without having the directional aid of, seeing where the boundaries were on this and what was going to happen. Each day unfolded a new set of circumstances, which meant a whole rethink of any plan that I had. So, God laughed when I said I got a plan. All I kept doing was playing on the fly, and we're still doing that. But the tonality of it, to see industries stop cold, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, the film industry. I make movies, and 4 movies this year, 4 or 5 lined up. I mean, it just stopped absolutely cold. And when the spigots are turned off, all the economics are turned off, there's a lot of fear, and a lot of anxiety in your organization and your people and your industry. So it was managing to remain hopefully optimistic and positive that we'd get through this, but not having the answer on how to get through it.
Yeah. We're all looking to get back to some sense of normalcy as soon as we can. And I think for many people, sports is one of the ways that, we're hoping to get back to normalcy, both, watching it on television and also, participating in live sports. How long do you expect this to go on? And I know it could be a different answer for baseball or basketball and so on. I guess from my own personal perspective, one of my favorite things to do is sit in the sun at Dodger Stadium, have a beer and a hot dog. When am I going to be able to do that again?
Well, you can have a beer anywhere you want. You can't do it at Dodger Stadium, right? Right, yeah. I'm not Karnak, that may get by from your audience, but Johnny Carson used to say, okay, and the answer is Karnak. I'm not Karnak. I can't really foretell it. I think that we have to recognize that this is a whole new set of cards that have been dealt to us. And as in the business of movies and television, the business of sports and live entertainment. But what is the center post of it all, and this is the thing that I think is an interesting issue, is that we're all tribal. The modern day campfire has been with us for 30,000 years. We flock together. We enjoy each other's presence. And while we can have a digital array like this or other ones that are very useful, but ultimately we really need the nurturing of other different kinds of people in an environment together. I remember one thing that struck me. I remember sitting in a movie theater several years ago. Must have been 10 years ago, many times since then, obviously, but 10 years ago in a film we made, produced, and turned around. I was sitting in the second row and turned around. It was a 600-seat theater, and I saw a very pastiche of people. all colors, all ages, all sizes, all sexes, laughing and crying together. And there is something really important in that in our culture. There's something very cohesive in that in our culture. And we can't lose that, whether it's gotten through concerts or live theater or film and television or sports, where the engagement level is so high and so important because the audience thinks they make a difference in the outcome. And they do. Yeah. So when you look at that, you say, there's no chance that we're going to surrender that after 90 days of this. It's just not real. The idea is the malady going to sink the economic engine of it? That's really a more significant factor, because if you decimate the engine and so make it so dysfunctional and unhealthy, it may not resolve itself quick enough. It may not be able to recapture that value proposition, which I think is important for society.
You always talk about the importance of experiences in all your businesses. That's really that's really your business. And obviously this is going to fundamentally change the nature of the experience. It's not just the event. It's, as you mentioned, it's participating in it with a lot of other people. How do you see, us both in sports and movies across kind of the businesses you're in? You could imagine, for example, playing games without fans and having people watch it on TV, or with limited number of fans until we can get back to the way things once were. How do you see that unfolding? How do you see the experience sort of evolving?
Well, I'm a storyteller, so I have to tell you a story to make the point make, and that is that all the forces that are on audience engagement, audience experiences, all the forces that have in the past that have won, all the events that happen in the world that said it'll never be the same, it'll change, that thing. I look to history, and remember, I was born during World War II. 60 million people died. I lived through, having the government make me believe that a 1/4-inch plywood desk would save me from the hydrogen bomb if I ducked under it. I watched the president be assassinated. I watched the cities across the country burn. I mean, I've seen a lot of Vietnam. My family served in Vietnam. I've seen a lot of events that we said, this is going to stop us cold. I think the nature of human beings to gather, to participate, to be involved, to be informed, to be taught, is a social experience. And it's so important to maintain that. And digital tools and resources like we have here today are important to have, because they reach a disparate audience that might not be able to gather at the same place at the same time, and they're very valuable. But in the context of the human story, the modern campfire, the level of engagement that an audience gets live together, laughing, cheering, crying, is so important, so vital to the cohesive of a divergent society. It just really is. We're on this today. I see you and I. We're both white, both male. And so you think, is that the world? And we know it's not the world. So the idea that when we see different groups laugh, cry, cheer, and respond, it's really important, especially in our social engagement entities like sports, entertainment. And actually, I didn't think I would say this, but I'll take a chance. I actually had 2 courses that were going on right now, 2 at the same time at your school. And we talked about this. And it happened 4 days before the courses started. I said, I'm good. I'm very digital. I'm very been involved in it all my life. I can't do it. I can't get that thing to work in this short order. It will be a bad course. And I'm not saying we can't do it in the future, but you need to really plan those. It's not just, it's like, you don't make a movie by just standing a camera in front of people and having them talk. They've got a performance. They got to have all tools and resources, because we measure that in our life by the best. So I think education, which is an audience experience too, that engagement of people in the same room, breathing the same air, exchanging, glancing, looking at other people in real time, not just on a monitor, is a very vital part of our social story. And our ability to deliver narrative that way is so important. And so, even though we're going to teach and use tools to expand the potential of education to a whole set of audiences, that's good, but not at the cost of having folks be real-time live together, experiencing each other. And I think that's really something that has to be very carefully curated as quickly as possible, whether it's in film, television, sports, movies, education, concerts, theater. I think it's going to have to come back pretty quickly. Otherwise, we'll lose something in our society, a cohesion that comes from seeing those people in that same space as us.
One of the themes that has emerged from this speaker series that we began just a few weeks ago is that the current crisis is accelerating trends that were already in place before the crisis. And I guess there's several parts to this I want to ask you about. That suggests that there may be opportunities in this crisis that we should be perhaps trying to take advantage of. Another thing is I know there's some businesses that you are already in, like esports, that was growing in popularity. Can you tell us a little bit about where we know the challenges pretty well, but where you see the opportunities? And for some of the businesses you're in, like esports, how do you see this accelerating its popularity?
Well, yeah, I'm certainly not the font of all knowledge or a seer that I did it because I saw COVID happening 5 months or a year from now or 2 years from now. I saw the audience happening and I responded to the audience. And so in things like VR, which I'm a very big proponent of, we just sold the company to Apple that was built. But I believe this will accelerate the VR process of being there without actually being there, but having the experience of engagement at a much higher level than just a visual screen, that you are actually feel a sense of participation. It doesn't replace being there, doesn't replace the communal experience of seeing all the other people. But again, it's a tool. It's another resource that you can use to, especially in this environment and in other environments, to really give a more resonant, memorable, and actionable experience to any narrative or any visual that you may be promulgating. Whether it's science or whether it's medicine or whether it's education or whether it's entertainment or sports. It will be it. And I did it only because I saw it as a natural transition, a shifting from when I was a young man. I was very much a proponent of packaged media, and everyone wanted to kill me in the movie business. But the idea of shifting the control to the audience. The audience wants to be a participant in their experience. So those kinds of things like VR, AR and VR, shift the control more to the audience so they can make their own experience. They can be a participant, more of a participant, not just a passenger. So I think that was well underway, like with Facebook and Oculus and a whole bunch of companies that saw that as a vehicle, as did I. And then esports is really, it's like an iceberg. No one really saw it. They saw this little tip of a bunch of young people playing video games. They didn't realize the giant amount of audience that was underwater that you didn't see, that were consuming. In fact, there's such a large audience that they had I don't want to say abandoned, but they had forsake traditional kinds of media, traditional kinds of sports to play esports, to engage themselves in the participation of tribal activities, games, and even learning activities. So that culture is very well and humanly possible going to change our whole culture, because it's going to offer the opportunity for a new way of learning through gamification. It's going to offer an opportunity for audiences to really be more participatory while they're at home. And young people under 22, 23, 24 who've embraced this with ferocity and total intensity have built an incredible industry for us in that area. Huge, and it's doing very, very well. It will not replace curated entertainment. It will not replace it. It will actually force curated entertainment and engagement and education to become, you're going to hate this, more gamified and more digital and more involved with curation of content than ever before, because these students have become Bible carriers for that kind of learning and that kind of experience. So we see that as a natural increase because of this. It will accelerate that process. And that won't be necessarily to the detriment of what we call live entertainment, live sports, or live education. It will be an adjunct to it. And we'll still want that. So I think that's a good sign of this, and something that I'm, as an older guy, much older guy, I'm very much in favor of, and a business with it. There's a lot of uncertainty of exactly how it'll work, but you see the students, young students, all the way from elementary school all the way up, who are complete gamified. They do it all the time. They speak, they use it as a social system to connect with other people. You see the language, I see it in my classroom, the language of people using gamified language when they talk about social interaction on business and business commerce. So I think as these analog folks, like we all are only analog, become more digital community folks, I think we'll see a real explosion in that area, and positive explosion and benefit.
In your, you're in so many businesses where this could apply. Where do you see that that complementarity working best? I mean, you're in baseball, football, basketball, movies. Where do you see that future melding in kind of the best way? I think you're going to get upset with me. I actually think it's going to have, and I've been teaching for 40 years, unbelievable effect in education, unbelievable effect of education, because kids learn rapidly when they're participants. Mm-hmm. They learn much more rapidly, and they consume that experience and the content. So when you think of the narrative as an engaged tool, and a person watches the narrative, they get information. But information isn't memorable, resonant, and actionable unless it's bonded with emotion, unless you own it in a very unique way. Repetition, experience, communication, success and failure with it. And gamification gives the opportunity for that as another tool in education, because these young people are all been brought up since they're 3, 4, 5, 6 of being active in their own rescue. You see, I watched my grandson reach across to a magazine, he's 3 years old, and slide his finger across the magazine as if he could change the image. That told me a lot of things. That said to me, we're not going to change the nature of these young people. They're going to want to be active in their own rescue, participants in it, in their education, in their socialization, in their sports, in their commerce. So I think we have to recognize it. There's no dike high enough or number of figures that can hold that tide back. When you started, when you started this, you said you're not going to like me for saying it. I guess part of that is maybe the way we've been traditionally trained as educators and so on. Maybe we're not so well prepared for this. How do you see our role? You've been a teacher for decades. I've been doing it for 25 years. How are we going to have to adapt? You gave us some sense of that, but how fundamentally are we going to have to rethink how we do things?
Well, I think we have to think about us, this is a little hard to say, as in the audience business. In this case, students are audiences, and the engagement business. And in order to make information resonant, memorable, and actionable in our students, it has to be exposed to them in a way that they're used to consuming it, that they feel a participant, not a passenger, that they can utilize it and orient themselves around it easily. They become more functional. The more participatory, the more powerful it resonates inside of them. So I think the recognition that this is not the end of this process, not the end of the beginning of this process, it's the beginning of the beginning of the process. And so if we, as teachers, as people, as regents, and as educators, and as deans, remain curious rather than critical. I mean, in the early years, oh my God. I mean, in the early years, 10 years ago, if I mentioned that people they wanted to shoot me. They thought I was crazy. The idea would be that if we can find tools that engage people emotionally, intellectually, that make the content more resonant, memorable, and actionable for them, which these tools do, they're going to be empowering for these students in their careers, in their business. And it's actually something that without that, they will be less effective, because when you think about engagement and you think about business, you're the head of a business school, think about business, it's a social experience. You have to engage people with the ideas. You have to get them to commit their economic resources, to overcome their fear or anxiety of failure. You have to get them to pay attention, and then you don't get their intention unless they get their attention. So these are all tools that help you resource that attitude and aptitude. So it's going to be part of the process of transformation, notwithstanding the acceleration that COVID's given to all of these things. But I can assure you, if you don't get upset with me, if you and I were sitting even in a ballroom of three or 400 people, I don't know how many people are watching this now, 300 or 400 people, and we got their eyes, and they saw us breathing the same way, and could see us glancing at each other in the right way, and they could look at each other and see how we're reacting to ideas, fully, and see it en masse, and then laugh, cheer, or laugh. They will leave with a deeper resonance of the experience, and it would be more functionally effective for them in the future. Now, somebody living in Seattle today couldn't be down here, right? So, and that's true about the whole country, which brings me to my next most important point that I want to get across, which is really something that really always blows my mind. The idea that in education, recognizing that education is a audience experience business, we have to allow, and I don't mean entertaining, laughing, crying, or cheering. I mean, we have to coach our coaches with the tools that these students are now becoming used to and are so familiar with, and it's the filter through which they see their lives. We have to be able to do that. And so we have to coach and teach the teachers with the tools and help them, because they've got the knowledge, they've got the background, they've got the experience, they've got the will and the humor and the interest to do it. But we've got to help them with those tools that'll be more resonant with the audience there. So I think that's an important point, and I bring it up at the Regent meetings. I bring it up often at the Regent meetings, and a lot of times they roll their eyes. I had a conversation. This is take a little bit off point, but it's a perfect one. I had a conversation. One of the regents, Lark Park, said, "Let's go see all the chancellors." They were meeting up at the headquarters in Oakland as regents, and we did an ex officio, not an official meeting with the chancellors. And the comment was, we had heard all the people in the university talk about another building, another dormitory, another larger thing for more people, another building, a real brick and mortar strategy. And we said to them, this was a month and a half before COVID, that's not the only strategy we should employ. We should be thinking about a click and mortar strategy. And then they, of course, said, well, we need socialization of the students. The students need all these in socialization. I said, yeah, 5 years? How about 2 years? And then some of the courses become another way. So the idea is we're going to have to rethink a lot of things that this is going to accelerate. Not bad, not fearful, but joyful and interesting and engaging. And as it will turn out, when you take a problem and view it as an opportunity, good things can happen.
I just have a couple more questions, and then I want to get to the audience questions because there are many. But I want to sort of switch gears a little bit and talk about what I think has been really the great thing that has come out of this for me, and I think for many, which is to see the response of so many who are very fortunate to help out those who are less fortunate and really the most vulnerable among us. Tell us a little bit about what the Dodgers, LAFC, the Warriors, the businesses that you're involved with, and you personally have been doing, because I know there's much that you've been doing to help others in our community.
It comes first from the expression of attitude. There are many tools, many and many resources, but it all spells nothing unless the resourcefulness and the attitude of the benefactors, the participants, are such. And I think on those teams, I think we have a high degree of social awareness and a high degree of recognition. And let me say this without sounding callous. It's good business. It's good business to be seen that way. We are in the audience business. We want to love and respect and help and support our audiences. And if they're in need, we want to be respectful and helpful to them. So that's not bad to say that having the right attitude has rewards for it. You're not doing it for that reason. You're doing it for the reason that these are your people. These are the people that help build your enterprise, and you want to be able to hear their cries and hear their calls for help. And we've kept an enormous amount on our payroll and on our system, hoping that either a vaccine will come along, or hoping that we can get back to playing again with fans in the stands and butts in the seats, all of them. But every one of the business I can't make any of the movies that we had to start stone dead. Can't get any of the teams to play, but I can still engage with we can still engage with our audiences, and it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do because it's the right thing. And I think that the idea is if you aim at your audience's wallet, you're thinking about a transaction. If you aim at their heart, you're thinking about a relationship. And the real business we're in is relationship capital, whether it's in the educational system or whether it's in the film or movie or television system or in the sports system. We're in relationships. We depend upon not the transaction, but our relationships with the people that make up our business culture and our economy. So it's not the reason we do it, but we know it's a good outcome for it, and that doesn't make it any less valuable. And we're taking a lot of time, effort, money, and resources, which are very dear right now, to do that. And we think it's worthwhile because we are a member of the community. We depend upon the community wholly and fully for our success. And it's a very interesting thing when we did this show, Last Dance. I had a whole bunch of people say to me, "Boy, weren't you lucky that you made this last month and it came out now?" Well, we weren't lucky we made it last month. We started 2 years ago when everything was competing with us for a moment on television to get. And were we fortunate that there was nothing else on when we did it? Yeah, I mean, God doesn't deal out cards equally. He or she just, parses the reality to us all, and we deal with it the way we deal with it. And so I think that at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, that you have to say to yourself, we're going to look for opportunities. Helping people is a good opportunity to look for and to fish for. It's a good thing to cast your line over the horizon and help the people where you can't see become more effective, feed themselves, feel hopeful. And one of the things that is really bugs me, I'm going to say this in my pulpit, is that the media sells bad news. They do a great job of that. They're just bad news. A meter running in the corner of the number of deaths. Why don't we do deaths by tobacco? They outstrip this. The meter would go like this, but it doesn't sell their tickets. So the idea, what we have is we have a cottage industry going up on the benefit of the malaise. So I have some discomfort and anger around stuff, but I guess it's all part of the experience of life and the audience having a say in what they want to say.
I'm going to go to audience questions now. Thank you, Peter. One question that we're seeing a lot of, and I'll sort of try to lump it together. There's, I think, sort of diverging impacts of the crisis. We're seeing it in businesses. Small businesses are being impacted very severely, and as you know, on the task force that you're on, the state task force, the effects on small businesses are pretty extraordinary. And a question that's coming up is whether you're seeing and what your views are about what might happen in, for example, sports, movies. Sports, the Dodgers are reasonably reasonably deep pocketed. Are you worried about some of the teams in some of the major sports being able to survive some extended period of time? And what about players in the entertainment industry? Smaller players who may not be able to bring about the financial wherewithal to survive.
Just you saying that gives me sphincter arrest. I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the problem. You you're out at sea and you can't see land. You keep swimming. There's no promise. There's not even a premise to get a promise. And I think one of the things I am worried about is that constantly we're talking about the problem. Constantly we're talking about no light at the end of the tunnel, no horizon. Bad news seems to sell better than good news or good opportunity or hope and expectation, which is dismaying for sure. But I think that, to try and answer the question for you is that these small enterprises don't have the resiliency to come back. I mean, we see it all in our other businesses that we're involved with, restaurants and retail space. They're just not going to be able to come back. Now, that was already somewhat of a trend that was happening before. And this, these kinds of events, black swan events, accelerate trends, But, in order to succeed in this environment, in the past, you fished, like you cast your line, you felt the fish wiggle, you had some talent, and you rolled it in. If you're lucky, you got the fish ashore. Today, in this environment, you got to cast your line over the horizon where you can't see. And when you feel the tug of something, don't try to pull that into you. Allow yourself to be pulled in and see what resources you can use to be successful with those problems, those challenges. So for me, I don't have the answers. I have some questions. The questions is this just a hastening of an effect that was happening on its own, whether it's, food delivery or retail delivery or big box stores, or was it a fundamental change completely in it? Now, just to answer that question, we look at that across our businesses and we say to ourselves, yes, it eliminates a lot of friction. We've always dealt with friction in our business. What's friction? Friction is the time the audience makes a decision. I'd like to go to see this ball game, I'd like to go see this concert, this movie, and then they get 2.3 people, drive 11.7 miles for 30.7 minutes, wait 20.2 minutes to get in and sit next to 600 people or 1,000 or 20,000 people to watch it, and then repeat the whole process going out. All the stuff around the event of being there is friction. Nobody says, oh, I just can't wait to drive to the stadium. I just can't wait to stand in line. I just can't wait to try to pick up the hot dog. No, that's all friction. So somehow now we're starting to look at those things and say, part of this process is to make greater value for the fan by removing or reducing the friction. So there are a lot of outcomes that are forcing us to look at things that otherwise would have stayed in stasis for a while.
Another sort of set of questions. Obviously, sports, going to the movies, these were such sort of core parts of our lives. And it's, there are behavioral changes that may take a long time to work through. And obviously there's, we have to maintain healthy, safe environments. What are the things that you would like to see or the things that you believe we need to see in place so that we can begin to participate in whether it's as fans at a sporting event or at a movie theater? What are the things that we need to see before that can come back? Okay,
so in order to answer that, for me to answer that question, you have to cast a wider net of what than movies or sporting events. How about cruise ships? How about conventions? How about tourism? How about theme parks? How about big Coachella type events? These are all part of our culture. These are woven into our culture. They're embedded into it. You're not going to get rid of them, easily. You have to beat them in the head to get them away from it. The question is, how do we create an atmosphere of confidence that they can be safe, and confidence that the risk is extremely low? There was always risk. There's risk in everything. There's risk in going in the game. Listen, if you don't think human beings are going to return to a lot of their normalcy, do you remember when we had terrorism at the airport and they put in, take off your shoes, take off your jacket, take off your belt, stand in line? I'm never going to an airport. They're jammed. They're jammed. So the reality is we want what we want, and we as individuals providing the services are going to have to provide security and safety around it. We cannot ever provide a guarantee of absolute immunity, security, success. No chance. Oh, I get it. In the movie business, somebody asked me, Gumasan, why do you have to make a flop? Oh, right. That's the strategy. Just make hits. Why didn't I think of that? Well, it's the same in this, too. We're going to have success and failure. And we hope we have much more success and less pain from failure. And I think we have to look at that equation as a society carefully, not to lose the benefit of the businesses.
So I know you think you describe your role in entertainment and sports as a storyteller. And I want to sort of refer just to The Last Dance as an example. I thought it was wonderful, and it helped me get through a very difficult time. No good original programming, so I thought it was wonderful. But what makes a story compelling to you?
What makes a story or that?
What makes a story compelling to you?
You need a central character. We relate to human beings. We don't relate to the disaster or the wedding. We relate to the human beings. I'm in the emotional transportation business. I have to move people emotionally. You know, I can't get to their pocketbook. I can't get to their tongue to get them to spread the value of the offering. I have to aim for their heart. I have to find a compelling narrative which has an emotional resonance, and the cohesiveness of the performances and the direction, and certainly most importantly the script, in all of these things, sports and everything, is important. We have to set the table for that. And it's an alchemy that is very challenging. You know, can't just make hits. It's a very challenging alchemy. You do the same thing this year, you do last year, you have a flop. You do something completely difficult that nobody thinks can ever work, and that's the hit. And that's in every business, that's an audience business. So there's got to be a sense of discovery for the audience and the narrative. And I actually feel in teaching, actually, quite frankly, that I try to do that when I teach is to force it to be entertaining, it to be engaging, to try to be emotional about it. Sometimes as a fault, but I think as an overall benefit, the information needs to be created so that they own it, they get it. And whether it's information from a television show or a movie or a sporting event, it makes people have feelings. And we are a feeling creature. We're not zeros and ones, we're oohs and ahs.
There's going to be, I imagine, in a lot of industries, consolidation for the reasons we talked about. Some of these smaller players are going to have a hard time surviving. In entertainment, sports, the industries that you're most familiar with, where do you see that kind of activity happening?
Well, there are a couple of hidden arcane issues that they're going to be very careful with. For example, you can't have one great team that's financially strong and the rest of them fail. There'll nobody to play against. You know, someone said, why do you need 30 teams? Like, why do you need 3? Well, you have a national TV contract. You have teams in all the cities. You have venues. I mean, so the idea is we depend upon other teams and other sports for them to work. We also depend upon, crowds to give us a sense of experience. Why do people go on a 6,000 cruise ship? To see other people, to dance, to be involved, to learn culturally, whatever it is. So there is something that we have to remember that is important in this. And I don't think these big businesses can survive unless they're supported by some institutional bias, whether it's government, whether it's commerce, whether it's rules and regulations. They require that. And if they're too arcane and they present much more friction than is reasonable, the audience won't turn out. And that will be the end of it. Now, all you have to do in a food chain, you know this well, if you have a food chain of 5 and you take one out because of some reason, it can really work and the hand works. And you take a second one out, those 3 fingers are really hard to work. And if you're left with 1 finger, that's what you got. All right? So my point is you gotta be really thoughtful about the enterprise. It isn't just a simple solution. This enterprise has been built over years and years and years and years. It's got some detritus on them and some stuff that can be shed and that could be beneficial, but you don't want to kill the baby.
Is there, we're moving around in different topics, but is there something about your leadership style that you think really helped you navigate the crisis so far?
Yeah, I think that probably, I believe in questions, questions that people get afraid of questions a lot. Oh, I don't know the answer to the question, I'm afraid of it. Questions reveal to you a different approach. If you become curious about the question and don't exert your superiority over that question, you have a chance to really create a new opportunity and to succeed with it. So when I look at leadership and people doing things, I keep saying fishing has changed. When I was a little kid and I was 10 years old, we went to the dock with my dad. We put a night crawler. That's not a television show. Night crawler, which is a worm, on the thing. You saw them catching the fish. They lit the barbecue. You dropped off the dock the fish. You felt the tug. You pulled the fish in. You ate. It was pretty much the way it was. And then in the 80s and 90s, fishing was different. You had to tie the little fly and know what the fish was eating. You had to read the river, different set of talent. You'd cast it, a 10-pound line, and you'd catch a 20-pound fish. You needed talent to bring it in, patience and talent to bring it in. And that's the way it worked then. Today, the leadership role is you cast your line over the horizon where you can't see. And when you feel that tug of that, you can't allow yourself to pull it back to your past. You're going to let it pull you to the future and believe that you have the tools and the wherewithal and resources and resourcefulness to meet it head on and make it successful. So that's the change that I've seen.
And so what's tugging on you right now?
What's tugging on me is that the audience, the broad audience, business and commercial audience, wants to feel more a sense of certainty and positiveness in the marketplace. I think you see the signs of it in different places, which are really odd signs, but nevertheless in this malaise, you see them. And I think that, I think it's incumbent upon us as citizens, and therefore what we say and do with our elected officials, and definitely elected officials, to lead. Not lead by just, taking a poll or listening to some talking head on television, but to really lead with the kind of thoughtful authorship that will allow the babies, us, to survive, the industries to survive. If we don't have a long view of that, and so if I hate to say this, I'm in the people that die, or I'm the age, I'm everything. But I still think the reality is if we don't protect the baby, the businesses, the enterprise, commerce, our socialization, there'll be a lot more peril to us than what's going to happen.
There's so many here, Peter. I think we could spend days, but let me get back to some questions that a lot of our students are interested in. We, as you know, this is a challenging time for MBA students to be going into the job market. We are a school that has sort of a strong contingent of students who want to pursue careers in entertainment and sports. What advice would you give them in this environment to help them sort of, or to guide them on their endeavors?
I could be spiritual, say never give up your dream. I could be spiritual and say, chaos is a place where there's great opportunity. But I would say this: continue to assemble the tools that you believe will be necessary in the 21st century to succeed in those enterprises. And when you're getting those tools to charity, or you're getting those tools to other commerce enterprises, where you're dealing with business and dealing with other business individuals and dealing with communities and dealing with charitable institutions, you're dealing with, buyers and sellers. In this period, I think you continue to have a vision of what you'd like to do and where you'd like to do it, but continue to assemble the resources and resourcefulness and keep your dream alive. And I think there'll be a tremendous opportunity in all these businesses, in all of the commerce businesses. There's no doubt about it. People still want to laugh, cry, and cheer. And they don't want to laugh, cry, and cheer over the disease. They want to laugh, cry, and cheer over experiences they have and over product that they see and consume. And you can see that's still alive and very, very well valued. What I would say is that there will we'll always have Paris. There will always be, it's something over anybody's head that's not 50 and above, but the idea would be there will always be sports. It's in our nature. There will always be entertainment. There will always be filmed entertainment. Somebody said, this will be the end of, can you believe somebody said, I commented on television, said, this will be the end of music. I leaned forward and I thought, this guy is a moron. He's an absolute moron. He should be banned from any television. The end of music? I mean, part of human beings since they first walked in their bare feet in the jungle. I mean, but the idea that those kinds of statements, miss the whole point. The whole point is all of these things that drive us are going to be there in full form and full fashion with great opportunity, even greater opportunity. But the roads will have some more bends and twists to it. So you have to become a little more malleable, a little more inventive, a little more imaginative. Look at the cottage industries that are already growing up around these businesses that weren't even in existence. They were allowed to now blossom. I think that I'm very optimistic, and my one admonition is don't watch the news.
Peter, we're going to stop here. We've come to the end of our time. I can't tell you how much I love talking with you. You have wonderfully unique perspectives on so many things. I always learn a lot. I'm sure all of our participants learned a lot today. Thanks so much for participating. I can't wait till we have a chance to see each other again in person. Thanks so much, Peter.
And thank you for the opportunity. And thank all those people that watch for listening. I appreciate it.